6.8 million years ago, a small, terrified primate did something that had never been done before. It looked at a massive predator that could kill it instantly, and instead of running, it attacked. That single moment of insane courage didn't just save one life. It changed the entire course of evolution and turned the weakest species on Earth into the most dangerous predators the planet has ever seen. But we almost didn't make it. Scientists recently discovered that our ancestors came within a hair's breadth of total extinction. So what happened in that crucial moment that saved our species and launched us toward global domination? The answer is written in blood across the African savanna. Picture this: Earth 6.8 million years ago. No cities, no roads, no smartphones, just raw, untamed wilderness stretching endlessly in every direction. The Africa our early ancestors called home was a completely different world, one that would seem both alien and magnificent to our modern eyes. The climate was warmer and more humid than today, with vast forests covering much of what we now know as dry savanna. Massive rivers carved through the landscape, creating lush corridors of life that supported an incredible diversity of creatures. The famous Great Rift Valley was still forming, its geological upheaval creating new habitats and evolutionary pressures that would ultimately shape our own destiny. But here's what's truly mind-blowing. Our ancestors weren't the dominant species. They weren't even close. In this prehistoric world, early hominins were essentially bit players in nature's grand theater, constantly looking over their shoulders for threats that could end their lives in an instant. The air itself would have felt different, thicker, more oxygen-rich, filled with sounds we can barely imagine today. The roars of predators we've never seen, the thunderous footsteps of creatures that dwarf any animal alive today, and the constant rustle of vegetation as unseen dangers move through the shadows. The cast of characters sharing this world with our ancestors reads like something from a science fiction movie. Giant saber-toothed cats, some larger than modern tigers, prowled the forests with canine teeth that could pierce through bone as easily as we bite through an apple. These weren't your average predators, they were evolutionary masterpieces, perfectly designed killing machines that had ruled their territories for millions of years. Then there were the elephants, but not the relatively modest ones we know today. We're talking about creatures that stood nearly twice as tall, with tusks that curved like massive ivory scimitars. Imagine encountering a creature the size of a two-story building, weighing as much as several school buses combined, and possessing the intelligence to hold grudges. The skies weren't safe either. Massive birds of prey circled overhead, some with wingspans that could cast shadows the size of small aircraft. These aerial predators had perfected the art of hunting from above, swooping down to snatch prey with talons powerful enough to crush skulls. But perhaps most terrifying of all were the crocodiles. Modern crocodiles are impressive, sure, but their prehistoric cousins were absolute monsters. Some species reached lengths of over 40 feet, making them essentially living submarines equipped with jaws that could snap a tree trunk in half. Rivers weren't just water sources, they were death traps, patrolled by armored titans. In this dangerous world, early hominins occupied a precarious niche. They were too small to overpower most predators, too slow to outrun them, and lacked the natural weapons, claws, fangs, armor that other successful species possessed. All evolutionary logic, they should have remained minor players in the ecosystem, perhaps eventually fading into extinction like so many other species. Yet something remarkable was happening in their developing brains. While other animals relied purely on instinct and physical prowess, these early ancestors were beginning to think, to plan, to innovate. They were developing something that no other species possessed in quite the same way: the ability to see beyond the immediate moment and imagine different possibilities. They began to notice patterns: which fruits ripened when, where water could be found during dry seasons, how different animals behaved before storms. More importantly, they started to understand that they could influence their environment, rather than simply react to it. The landscape itself was changing too, becoming more open as forests gave way to grasslands. This shift created new opportunities, but also new challenges. With fewer trees to climb for safety, these early hominins had to develop new survival strategies. The stage was being set for one of the most significant evolutionary leaps in Earth's history: Little did the other creatures sharing this ancient world know that the small, seemingly vulnerable primates walking among them were about to embark on a journey that would forever change the balance of power on our planet. The transformation didn't happen overnight. For hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors lived as scavengers, following the kills of more powerful predators and hoping to snatch whatever scraps they could before being chased away. Picture them huddled around the remains of a gazelle, nervously glancing at the horizon for signs of returning lions, their hands trembling as they tried to tear meat from bones with nothing but their fingernails and teeth. But desperation breeds innovation. Somewhere around 2.6 million years ago, a breakthrough occurred that would echo through millennia. An early hominin, perhaps driven by hunger or curiosity, picked up a sharp stone and discovered it could cut through tough hide and sinew far better than their natural tools ever could. That moment, that simple act of using an external object to extend their capabilities, represents one of the most significant leaps in the history of life on Earth. These weren't sophisticated tools by our standards. We're talking about crude choppers, basically rocks that had been deliberately shaped to have a sharp edge. But in the context of their world, these were revolutionary technologies. Suddenly, accessing the nutrient-rich marrow inside bones became possible. The protein and fat that had been locked away by nature's tough packaging was now within reach, or perhaps more accurately, demonstration spread through small groups. The knowledge of tool-making wasn't just individual innovation. It became cultural transmission. Parents showed children, successful techniques were copied and refined, and gradually, tool use became an integral part of their survival strategy. But making tools was just the beginning. The real game changer came when these early hominins realized they could use their innovations not just to process food, but to actively acquire it. The leap from scavenging to hunting wasn't immediate. It was a gradual process that required not just better tools, but entirely new ways of thinking and cooperating. Archaeological evidence suggests that organized hunting began to emerge around 1.8 million years ago. These weren't the sophisticated hunting parties we might imagine from movies. Instead, picture small groups of maybe 5 to 8 individuals, armed with sharpened sticks and crude stone weapons, working together to take down prey that individually they could never hope to defeat. The first successful hunts were probably opportunistic affairs. Maybe they encountered a young antelope separated from its herd, or found an injured animal that couldn't escape quickly. But success bred confidence, and confidence led to ambition. They began to study their prey more carefully, learning behavioral patterns, migration routes, and weaknesses they could exploit. Communication became crucial. Simple gestures and vocalizations evolved into more complex signals that allowed hunters to coordinate their movements. One individual could drive prey toward others waiting in ambush. They learned to use the terrain to their advantage, forcing animals into narrow valleys or against cliff faces where escape became impossible. The psychological shift was as important as the technological one. These early hunters had to overcome millions of years of evolutionary programming that told them to flee from large animals. Instead, they were learning to see themselves as predators rather than prey. The evidence of their success is written in ancient bone beds across Africa. Archaeologists have discovered sites where the remains of large animals show clear signs of systematic butchering, cut marks that could only have been made by stone, tools, bones cracked open to access marrow, and arrangements that suggest organized processing of kills by groups working together. But perhaps the most remarkable discovery is how quickly these hunting techniques spread and evolved. Within a few 100,000 years, we see evidence of increasingly sophisticated strategies. They learned to create persistence hunts, chasing prey over long distances until exhaustion made the animals vulnerable. They developed ambush tactics, using their understanding of animal behavior to predict where prey would travel. Fire became another revolutionary tool in their hunting arsenal. By controlling fire, they could drive animals toward predetermined kill sites, cook meat to make it more digestible, and extend their hunting range into previously inaccessible areas. The ability to cook meat also meant they could extract more nutrition from their kills, fueling the energy-hungry brains that were driving their technological advancement. Most importantly, Successful hunting required unprecedented levels of cooperation and social organization. They had to share resources, coordinate complex activities, and develop systems for distributing the rewards of group efforts. These social innovations laid the groundwork for increasingly complex societies. The small, vulnerable primates who once cowered in the shadows of megafauna were transforming into something entirely new: cooperative, innovative predators whose success would soon echo across continents. Here's where the story gets absolutely mind-blowing. What started as a survival strategy, hunting for food, triggered a cascade of evolutionary changes that would fundamentally reshape not just our ancestors, but the entire planet. It's like watching dominoes fall in slow motion across millions of years, each change setting up the next. Transformation in an unstoppable chain reaction. The first domino was nutrition. High-quality protein and fat from successful hunts provided the raw materials for something extraordinary: rapidly expanding brain size. Between 2 million and 200,000 years ago, human brain size nearly tripled. But here's the catch: brains are incredibly expensive to maintain. Your brain right now is consuming about 20% of your total energy, despite being only 2% of your body weight. For our ancestors, this metabolic cost was even higher. Hunting made this possible. The concentrated nutrition from meat provided the energy surplus needed to fuel larger, more complex brains. But those bigger brains weren't just passive beneficiaries. They were actively driving better hunting strategies, creating a feedback loop that accelerated human evolution at an unprecedented pace. Think about it. Better brains led to better hunting techniques, which provided more nutrition, which supported even larger brains, which enabled even more sophisticated hunting strategies. This wasn't gradual change, this was evolution in overdrive, happening faster than almost anything else in the fossil record. The social implications were equally revolutionary. Successful hunting required planning, coordination, and communication on a scale that no other species had attempted. Our ancestors weren't just becoming smarter individually. They were becoming collectively intelligent in ways that would define human civilization. The development of language represents perhaps the most profound consequence of our hunting heritage. When you're coordinating a hunt involving multiple individuals, precise communication becomes a matter of life and death. Simple gestures and basic vocalizations weren't enough anymore. Our ancestors needed to convey complex information. The herd usually moves through that valley at sunrise. But if we position 3 hunters behind those rocks and 2 more by the water source, we can cut off their escape route. Archaeological evidence suggests that by 300,000 years ago, human language had evolved far beyond simple communication. They were engaging in abstract thinking, planning future scenarios, and sharing knowledge across generations. Elders could pass down hunting wisdom, successful techniques could be refined and improved, and dangerous mistakes could be avoided through storytelling. But language did more than improve hunting efficiency. It created the foundation for cumulative culture. Unlike other species that have to rediscover survival techniques in each generation, humans could build on previous knowledge. A successful hunting innovation in one group could spread to neighboring communities, be modified and improved, and eventually become part of a shared cultural toolkit. This cultural evolution began moving faster than biological evolution. While physical adaptations took thousands of generations to spread through populations, a new hunting technique could spread across continents in just decades. Our ancestors were becoming the first species to evolve primarily through culture. Rather than genetics, the implications were staggering. They were no longer limited by the slow pace of biological adaptation. They could innovate, share, and improve their survival strategies within single lifetimes, giving them an unprecedented advantage over every other species on Earth. The ultimate consequence of becoming successful hunters was nothing less than global domination. Armed with advanced tools, sophisticated social organization, and the ability to adapt quickly to new environments, our ancestors began spreading out of Africa around 70,000 years ago. And wherever they went, they brought their hunting expertise with them. The results were dramatic and sometimes devastating. As human hunters arrived in new continents, massive extinction events followed. Australia lost 85% of its large animal species within 20,000 years of human arrival. North America saw similar patterns: giant ground sloths, massive bears, saber-toothed cats, and woolly mammoths all disappeared shortly after skilled human hunters crossed the land bridge from Asia. This wasn't accidental overhunting. It was the inevitable result of introducing the world's most adaptable predator into ecosystems that had no evolutionary defenses against human intelligence, cooperation, and technology. Our ancestors had become so effective at hunting that they could successfully target any species, in any environment, using tools and strategies that could be rapidly modified for local conditions. But the story doesn't end with extinction. Those same hunting-derived abilities, cooperation, innovation, communication, and adaptability became the foundation for agriculture, civilization, and eventually the technological world we inhabit today. Every time you solve a problem creatively, work as part of a team, or adapt to a new challenge, you're using cognitive abilities that were forged in the crucible of prehistoric hunting. The small primates who once feared the shadows had become the apex predators of the entire planet. So here we are, 6.8 million years later, descendants of those first brave hunters who dared to pick up a stone and imagine a different future. Every major achievement of human civilization, from the pyramids to space exploration, from the internet to medical breakthroughs, can trace its roots back to those pivotal moments when our ancestors decided to become active participants in their own survival rather than passive victims of circumstance. The next time you're facing a challenge that seems impossible, remember that you carry within you the genetic legacy of creatures who looked at predators 10 times their size. Thought, we can figure this out. The same innovative spirit that transformed scared scavengers into the planet's most successful hunters lives on in every human alive today. What challenges in your own life might benefit from that same prehistoric audacity, the willingness to try something completely new, to work together with others, and to persist even when the odds seem overwhelming? Drop a comment below and let me know what modern hunt you're planning to tackle. And if this journey through our incredible origins fascinated you as much as it did me, hit that subscribe button, because the story of how we became who we are today is far from over.